chosen one. Your life is about to change. The blessing is too big. There is something you need to hear before you make another decision about your life. You may be closer to the answer than you think. For months, maybe even years, you have been asking yourself the same questions. Why did this happen to me? Why did that relationship fall apart? Why did the opportunity disappear? Why did I pray so hard and still feel like nothing was changing? Why did everyone else seem to be moving forward while you were stuck in the same place? And perhaps, the hardest question of all, did I somehow fail? But what if you didn't fail? What if the season you thought was destroying you was actually revealing you? What if the closed doors weren't proof that you were rejected? What if they were protecting you from walking into something you were not ready to carry? Because sometimes God does not change your circumstances first. Sometimes He changes you first. And that process can feel painfully quiet. It can feel lonely. It can feel unfair. But there comes a moment when you suddenly realize, I am not the same person who entered that season. Oh, you have more wisdom now, more discernment, more patience, more self-respect, and perhaps most importantly, you finally know what you will never accept again. That is not failure, that is growth. And today, I want you to understand why everything you survived may have been preparing you for the chapter that is now beginning. 1. You were being tested without knowing it. There are tests in life that come with instructions. You know exactly what is expected of you. But there are other tests where nobody tells you that you're being tested. Those are the hardest ones. You discover them only afterward. You realize that the season of waiting was testing your patience. The rejection was testing your identity. The betrayal was testing your ability to forgive without becoming bitter. The uncertainty was testing whether you could continue moving forward without having every answer. And the silence? The silence tested whether you could trust God when you couldn't feel Him. Think about that. It is easy to believe when everything is working. It is easy to be grateful when the money is coming in. It is easy to praise when the relationship is healthy. It is easy to feel confident when everybody is supporting you. But what happens when everything becomes quiet? What happens when you pray and there is no immediate answer? What happens when you do the right thing and nobody notices? What happens when you have every reason to become bitter, yet something inside you says, don't become the thing that hurt you? That is where your character was being built, not in public, not under applause, but in private. And if you continued choosing what was right even when nobody was watching, then you have already accomplished something far more valuable than you realize. You have become stronger without needing the world to validate it. 2. The silence did not mean you were forgotten. There is a dangerous assumption we make when life becomes quiet. We assume quiet means nothing is happening. But think about a seed. You put it beneath the soil. For days, sometimes weeks, you see nothing. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But underneath the surface, roots are forming. The seed is breaking open. Something invisible is taking place before anything visible appears. Your life can work the same way. There are seasons when you cannot see progress because the most important work is happening underneath the surface. Your confidence is being rebuilt. Your priorities are changing. Your judgment is becoming sharper. Your dependence on other people's approval is weakening. Your understanding of yourself is becoming deeper. And one day, what was happening underneath finally becomes visible. That is why you should be careful about judging your life only by what you can see today. You may look around and say, nothing has changed. But perhaps everything has changed inside you. And internal transformation often comes before external transformation. 3. Stop measuring your life by other people's timelines. One of the quickest ways to lose your peace is to compare your chapter to somebody else's chapter. You see someone getting married, someone buying a house, someone launching a business, someone traveling, someone getting promoted, someone seemingly living the life you thought you would have by now. And suddenly, you begin questioning yourself. What's wrong with me? Why am I behind? Why hasn't my moment arrived? But listen carefully. Someone else's timing is not evidence that yours is wrong. A tree does not look at another tree and panic because its branches grew differently. Your journey has its own timing. You have experienced things that other people haven't. You have had to learn lessons they never had to learn. You have carried responsibilities they never carried. You have survived circumstances they may never understand. So stop using someone else's highlight reel to judge your unfinished story. You don't know what their private life looks like, and they don't know what your destiny requires. Your assignment may require preparation that theirs did not. Your road may take longer because you are building something that needs stronger foundations. Don't rush the foundation because you are impatient to see the building. 4. Some people had to leave. This may be one of the hardest truths for you to accept. Not everyone who leaves your life is your enemy. Some people leave because their role in your story has ended, and sometimes you keep trying to revive relationships that have already completed their purpose. You keep explaining yourself, you keep sending the message, you keep hoping they will finally understand. You keep waiting for the old version of the relationship to return, but sometimes God allows distance because you are being prepared for something different. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to expose them. You don't have to prove that they were wrong. You can simply release them, wish them well, learn the lesson, and keep walking. Because holding on to someone simply because you have history with them does not mean they belong in your future. There are people who are appropriate for your previous chapter but incompatible with your next one. And that's okay. Growth changes relationships. Healing changes boundaries. Self-respect changes what you tolerate. And when you change, your circle may change too. Do not confuse that with abandonment. Sometimes it is simply alignment. 5. You learned who you were in the dark. Anybody can feel powerful when everything is going well. But your difficult season introduced you to a version of yourself you had never met before. You discovered that you could survive disappointment. You discovered that you could wake up after crying all night and still go to work. You discovered that you could lose something you desperately wanted and still continue living. You discovered that you could be misunderstood without explaining yourself to everyone. You discovered that you could walk away from something you loved because you finally understood that love without peace was costing you too much. That is strength, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. And maybe you don't feel powerful because you remember how broken you felt. But surviving something does not become less significant because you were afraid while doing it. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is continuing while fear is present. You kept going. That matters. 6. Your old identity is starting to fall away. Sometimes the biggest change is not what you receive. It is what you stop believing about yourself. Maybe you used to believe you had to be liked by everyone. Maybe you thought saying no made you a bad person. Maybe you believed you had to keep proving your worth. Maybe you thought someone's rejection meant you weren't valuable. Maybe you believed your past determined your future, but now something inside you is changing. You are beginning to understand. Your worth was never created by another person's opinion. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need everyone to approve of you. You don't need to chase people who are determined to misunderstand you. You don't need to convince someone to recognize your value. And you certainly don't need to shrink yourself so another person feels comfortable around you. That is part of becoming new. The new version of you is not necessarily louder. It is simply more secure. You stop begging for what you deserve. You stop chasing what continually escapes you. You stop confusing emotional chaos with love. And you stop calling exhaustion loyalty. 7. The delay may have protected you. Here's something I want you to consider. What if some of the things you prayed for would have hurt you if you received them too early? What if that relationship had worked? Would you have discovered your self-worth? What if that job had accepted you? Would you have discovered the gift you eventually developed? What if that opportunity had arrived 5 years earlier? Would you have had the wisdom to handle it? Sometimes we call something a delay when it is actually preparation. Imagine giving a powerful position to someone who has not developed the maturity to handle it. The position becomes a burden. The opportunity becomes overwhelming. The blessing becomes destructive. Preparation matters. Character matters. Wisdom matters. And perhaps God was not saying no. Perhaps the answer was not yet. There is a huge difference. 8. You don't need to understand everything before you move. One of the things that keeps people stuck is their obsession with having complete certainty. They want to know how everything will work. They want the entire 5-year plan. They want guarantees. They want to know who will be there. They want to know exactly when the breakthrough will happen. But life rarely works that way. Sometimes you receive enough light for the next step, not the next 100 steps, just the next one, and that's enough. You don't need to know exactly how the story ends to make a wise decision today. You can take one step, then another, and another. Eventually, you look backward and realize that those small decisions carried you somewhere you could never have predicted. So if you have been waiting for absolute certainty, consider this your reminder. You may not need more information. You may need more courage. Pray. Think carefully. Seek wise counsel. Then move when the path becomes clear enough. 9. Your next chapter will require a different you. This is where many people get stuck. They want a new life while maintaining the habits, boundaries, relationships, and mindset of the old one. It doesn't work. A new chapter requires new decisions. If you want peace, you may have to stop entertaining unnecessary chaos. If you want financial stability, you may have to change your relationship with spending and discipline. If you want healthy relationships, you may have to stop accepting behavior that repeatedly hurts you. If you want confidence, you may have to stop asking everyone else whether you're good enough. Your next chapter cannot be built entirely with the habits that created your previous one. Something has to change. And maybe that change begins today, not tomorrow, today. Maybe today you stop checking whether someone has finally noticed your absence. Maybe today you stop reopening a door that God already helped you close. Maybe today you stop speaking about yourself like you're permanently damaged. Maybe today you forgive yourself. Maybe today you start believing that your future deserves more attention than your past. 10. Your test did not destroy you. It revealed you. Look at everything you've survived. There were moments when you thought you couldn't take another disappointment, yet you're here. There were nights when you wondered whether things would ever get better, yet you're here. There were people who walked away, yet you're here. There were opportunities you lost, yet you're here. There were prayers that seemed unanswered, yet you're still standing. And perhaps that is the evidence you were looking for. Not evidence that everything will magically become perfect, but evidence that you have already developed the strength to face whatever comes next. You are not entering your next chapter empty-handed. You are carrying wisdom, experience, discernment, patience, boundaries, faith, and a deeper understanding of who you are. Those things were expensive. You paid for them through experience. Don't waste what your difficult seasons taught you. Chosen one, maybe you have been waiting for a dramatic sign. Maybe you expected the sky to open. Maybe you expected someone to announce that your season had changed. Maybe you thought the moment would feel completely different. But sometimes the beginning of a new chapter feels surprisingly ordinary. You wake up, you breathe, you look around, and you realize, I'm done living like the old version of me. That's the moment. You don't need fireworks. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need permission from people who never believed in you. You need a decision, a quiet decision inside yourself. I will not allow what happened to me to determine who I become. That is where your power begins. Your past can explain you. It does not have to control you. Your disappointment can teach you. It does not have to define you. Your rejection can hurt you. It does not have to become your identity. Your waiting season can shape you. It does not have to become your permanent address. You are allowed to move forward. You are allowed to become happy again. You are allowed to dream again. You are allowed to trust again, with wisdom and healthy boundaries. And you are allowed to believe that your life can still surprise you. Final message. So tonight, before you go to sleep, I want you to do something simple. Think about the person you were when this difficult season began. Remember what they were afraid of. Remember what they didn't understand. Remember how badly they wanted certain things to work. And then look at who you are now. You may not have everything you wanted, but you're wiser, you're stronger, you're more aware, you're harder to manipulate, you're more selective about where you place your energy. And perhaps you finally understand that losing something does not always mean losing your future. Sometimes losing the wrong thing is how you finally make room for the right one. So stop calling yourself behind. Stop calling yourself forgotten. Stop calling yourself a failure because your journey doesn't look like somebody else's. Your story is still being written, and the chapter that broke you does not get to write the ending. You passed something important. Maybe not a test administered by heaven with a scorecard. Maybe it was the test of whether you could remain yourself after disappointment, whether you could keep your heart after betrayal, whether you could keep moving after rejection, whether you could find faith during uncertainty, whether you could become wiser without becoming bitter. And if you did those things, then you have already won something nobody can take away from you. You became someone stronger. Now walk differently, think differently, choose differently. Protect your peace. Honor your growth. Stop chasing what requires you to abandon yourself. And when the next door opens, don't walk through it carrying every fear from the last chapter. Leave some things behind, the old identity, the old excuses, the need for everyone's approval, the fear that your best days are behind you. They are not. You don't know what tomorrow holds. And that's the beautiful part. Your story is not finished. Your waiting season is not your whole life. Your pain is not your identity. Your past is not your prophecy. And the fact that you are still here means there is still something ahead of you worth walking toward. So take a breath, lift your head, thank God for what you survived, learn from what it taught you, release what no longer belongs in your future, and take the next step, not because you know exactly where every step will lead, but because you finally understand something you didn't understand before. You were never as lost as you thought you were. You were becoming, and now it is time to become who you were always capable of being. If this message spoke to you, write, "I'm ready" in the comments, not as a magical formula, but as a personal declaration that you are choosing to move forward. And remember this. The season that tested you does not get the final word. Your next chapter does. Go forward with peace. Go forward with wisdom. Go forward with faith. And most importantly, go forward.